Hey everyone, I'm Heather and I'm here to bring you my 2022 reading stats. I know it's a little bit late, but I am usually late when it comes to a lot of things, including YouTube, so better late than never. But I am bringing you these stats, and this is like the third time that I've tried to film this video because I'm a little off my rocker today. So we're gonna try to get through this. So if I seem a little bit I haven't filmed in a while, and yeah, it is what it is today. So the first stat is how many books that I read. I have read 109 books this past year. My goal for every year is at 100, and that's just an easy number for me to get to every year. I really don't pay attention to if I read my goal or not. It's exciting to get to it, but if I don't get to it, it doesn't hurt my feelings. If I do get to it, then that's just like pat on the back to me. But 100 books is typically a number that I can get to. But like I said, if I don't get to it, it just is what it is. Like last year, I barely got to it. I read 101 books because I just wasn't in the reading mood at the end of the year. So it really just depends on my mood, honestly, if I get to that number. Now the mood chart. I use Goodreads and I also use Storygraph because I like the graphs on Storygraph a little bit more, but I also like the simplicity of Goodreads a little bit more than Storygraph. So my moods chart I'm going to put up here for you, and it just shows you the moods that I was in. So my moods chart, the biggest chunks of the pie here are mysterious, dark, tense, adventurous, emotional, lighthearted, and funny. And then you also have reflective, hopeful, sad, informative. So I really tend to go for hard-hitting books. I read a lot of thriller, I read a lot of romance. I do like some sweet romance here and there, but it's usually like a hard-hitting romance that I like, and I also like darker stories. So the mood chart, or the mood pie, whatever you want to call it, really reflects the way that I read, and I think that it just says a lot about me as a reader, however you want to take that. The pace chart, I typically stay in either the fast or the medium paced. It's typically medium. I love fast-paced books, but I typically stay in that medium range. I do not like slow-paced books whatsoever. I get really bored. If I know that I'm going to be reading a slow-paced, I'm usually listening to it on audio. That's just because if it's not captivating me, I'm not going to read it. I'm going to put it down and I'm going to go for something else that I know that I'll enjoy a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with slow-paced books, they're just not a thing, and obviously this pie chart here reflects that because I read 10% slow-paced books and the rest were fast and the rest were medium. So the page number that I read over 37,000 pages this year. My average page range ranged between 341 pages, which reflects in this chart. That's the biggest chunk. I stay in between 300 to 499 page books. Big books intimidate me. There's going to be a big book fear video going up at some point this year. I don't know when it's going up because I fear big books. And I read 9% or for books that were over 500 pages. So yeah, I like those smaller books, or like the medium-sized books, you know, kind of like the pace of the books. So the pages per month, January, April, and October are typically my bigger months that I read. January being like the highest usually because I don't do anything during the winter. I don't like cold weather. I like to stay home during the winter. It gets dark earlier, so when it gets dark, this girl right here is reading. I read anytime during the day, but when it gets dark outside, that's typically when I read the most. And yeah, that's just me. When it gets warmer outside, or like in the fall, we do a lot more things family-wise, and I don't typically read as much. So the ratings chart, my average rating this year, I have 2 because like I said, I use Goodreads and I use Storygraph. I like Storygraph's rating system a little bit better than I like Goodreads, because Goodreads you give straight like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but on Storygraph you can get into those halves, you can get into the quarters, you can get into, you know, all the decimals there, and I like that a little bit better. So my Goodreads goal, or my Goodreads average, was 4 stars, which is high, but then I looked on Storygraph and it said 3.79 stars, which is more my speed. although I did have a lot more 4-star reads this year. So I do like Storygraph's method a little bit better when it comes to rating books. I appreciate that. I appreciate being able to do like the half and the quarter and, you know, all those different things. So yeah, my rating this year is a 3.79 star, or for 2020, you know what I mean. So ratings per star, I had 15 5-stars, 15 4.5 stars, and 35 4-stars. So that's where that 4-star comes in on Goodreads, you know. So yeah, I think that I had a really good reading year. So going down the list a little bit more, at a 3.5, I had 17 books. I had 1 3.25 and 13 3-stars. So overall, I did like a lot of what I read. I had more lower rating books this year than I ever have in the past, which isn't even a lot, honestly. But I had 6 2.5 stars, 1 2.25 stars, 6 2-stars, and I had 0 1-stars. Typically, I don't read books that I don't like, and I will put them down. I will DNF them, which I usually don't keep up with my DNFs. Like, if I don't like it and I DNF it, it comes off my reading, my reading list on Goodreads. It goes away and I don't even pay attention to it anymore. But I am going to try to pay more attention to it this year and keep up with it this year. I already have a list going, okay? I have 65 that I loved, which is 4-star and up. I have 31 that I liked, which is in between that 3 and 3.5 star. And then I had 13 that I disliked, which is the 2.5 and lower. So all together, out of the 109 books, let's do a little bit of math here. 65 divided by 109 equals, so about 60% of my books were 4 stars and up. 31 divided by 109, 28% of my books were around the 3-star range. And then 13 divided by 109, 12% of the books that I did not like are 2 stars, like below 3 stars. So I think that that's pretty good. I think that I had a fantastic reading year. I really liked a lot of the books that I read, and you can clearly see that in my ratings. So the best month that I had, even though I didn't read a lot of books during March, but the best month that I had reading wise is March at a 4.21 star rating, which that's very good. The most that I read, and you already saw that chart, is in January, and I read over 5,000 pages in January. I read a lot in January, y'all. And I plan on reading a lot more this January too. So my most read authors, I read a lot of authors that were new. 78 of the authors that I read this year were new. So I opened a lot of my horizon, met a lot of new authors, loved a lot of their stories, and I'm gonna continue with a lot of these authors. But my most read authors are Laura Thallis. That's the Horseman series, the 4 Horsemen series that I really liked. 2 of those books I gave 5 stars. And then the next one I read was at 3 books, and that's Tilly Cole. Obviously, I read the Hangsman series over again, and that was part of my beginning of the year reads. Then H.D. Carlton. I read 2 books from them. Emily Henry, I read 2 books. Catherine Ryan Howard, I believe, I read 2 books. El Casamino, which is the Stanley Donovan series, I read 2 books. Darcy Coates, I read 2 books. My favorite horror author, Jennifer McMahon, I read 2 books. Ruby Dixon, I started the Ice Planet Barbarian series, which I'm going to continue on with this year. Read 2 books, and then Stephen King I read 2 books from. So those are my most read authors from this year. Again, 78 new authors, so woo! So the genre chart here, this is like one of my favorite charts. I love looking at this chart. I read thriller, romance, mystery, contemporary, horror. So that's like exactly what this channel is all about. That's what I really love to read. I really stayed on trend this year. I didn't really go too far off the path because like there were so many books that I wanted to read in these different categories or these different genres. And I plan on doing the same thing this year too. So there's that. And the longest book that I read this year, dear Lord, is Outlander at 896 pages. That book took me 36 days to get through. Like literally 36 days to get through. Because not only was it long, but I did not enjoy that book. The shortest book that I read is My Dirty Duke at 114 pages. It was an erotic short story. It had a really big age gap. It was the girl's dad's best friend, so it was that kind of story. The average length that it took me to read each book is 6 days, and I blame Outlander for that because, like I said, it took me a really long time to read that book. It took me over a month. So those are really all the stats that I wanted to go through with you this year. I thought 2022 was a really good reading year, and I hope that I can read some more great books. I do have a lot of books that I did not get to that were on my 2022 most anticipated list, so those will be some of the first books that I read in the new year. And yeah, I'm super excited about 2023. I have already read a book. I've already enjoyed it. And yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited for this new year. You'll be seeing me a lot more, hopefully. And I can't wait to see what this year has in store. So hope you have a great day. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Let me know your reading stats for this past year. And I will see you very, very soon in the next one. Bye.